What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I know a lot of y'all have been asking for him, so he's back. Jimmy Watkins joining us, as well as the usual Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter, who you all come to listen to and get the insight from. Today, we are coming to you guys after the Cavs' 20th win of the season. They are the first team in the NBA to reach 20 wins. It's also one of the best starts in Cavs franchise history. 20-3, already a historical season, continues to make more history. They defeated the Denver Nuggets tonight in a game that kind of went back and forth and then saw them take a big lead and not give it back. 126-114. Chris, what did you take away from this one and how the Cavs fought it out?
It was a math equation. That's what it came down to me. Denver controlled the paint because that's what Denver does, and the Cavs won the game at the three-point line because that's what the Cavs have become. They are the most prolific three-point shooting team in the entire NBA. They shoot a better percentage from three-point range than any team in the league because they consistently generate quality looks. Yeah, they've got good three-point shooters. That certainly helps. Sam Merill, Darius Garland, Dean Wade, Donovan Mitchell, even Evan Mobley is shooting more threes. George Niang coming off the bench. Karis LeVert is shooting at a really high clip. I don't think it's sustainable, but he's shooting at a really high clip this year for the Cavs. Ty Jerome. So they've got a bunch of different three-point threats, but the numbers bear it out. When they shoot a bunch of threes and make a bunch of threes, they consistently win these games. And, Denver had a three-point problem. They made as many as Donovan Mitchell made on his own. They went 6 of 24 from three-point range. So it's great for the Nuggets that they can score 76 points in the paint and Jokic can dominate and Aaron Gordon can score at the rim and Russell Westbrook can score at the rim. But if you're going to keep pace with these top offenses in the NBA, whether it's the Cavs, whether it's the Boston Celtics, you better be able to shoot the three. And the Cavs have shown that they are a prolific three-point shooting team. And the Nuggets don't have enough in terms of three-point weaponry to keep up. So the Cavs continued to give up points in transition. They continued to give up points around the rim, but they didn't overreact to that. They didn't panic to that. They didn't start scrambling around on defense. They didn't start over-helping. They stayed true to what they wanted to do with their game plan, which was, allow as much as possible to Denver to take as many tough twos as they wanted, but run Michael Porter Jr. off the line, run Jamal Murray off the line, and don't allow Denver to have enough in terms of their offense to keep up with the team like the Cavs that can make 22 threes like they did tonight.
Yeah, it's funny to say this about a team that employs Nikola Jokic, but I thought the Nuggets looked really easy to guard at times tonight because in theory, right, it's supposed to be dump Jokic the ball and put the defense in an impossible situation. Either single up Jokic and get bodied under the basket where he'll flip it in. He did miss a couple of bunnies tonight, but I thought Jared Allen did a really good job making him work. Or the option that teams sometimes have to turn to, but it's death, is double Jokic, and then he gets shots for other people. The problem for the Nuggets is right now, who are you scared of him dishing it out to? I mean, there's got these guys, Russell Westbrook, Christian Brown is a nice player in a lot of different ways, but the downgrade from KCP to him as a shooter is significant. Julian Strawther, I don't think has been what they want him to be yet so far this season. It just seems like the Cavs, there's a lot of old Cavs in the new Nuggets, right? Like guys that are left open for three on purpose that Russell Westbrook, we'll take you. Go ahead, shoot that shot. Christian Brown, go ahead, shoot that shot. And again, both of those guys do good things on the basketball court, but if they're floor spacers, they're kind of getting in the way out there. And as a result, again, old Cavs, new Nuggets. As a result of having too many of those guys out there, what happens? You ask too much of your superstar. Right. Nikola Jokic is playing darn near 38 minutes per game right now. And Ethan I wasn't at the game tonight, but Ethan sent me a quote about this after the game, that during the pregame, where Malone was saying, like, yeah, we're kind of just hoping that basically we're hoping that the wheels don't fall off with Nikola Jokic, because sometimes, especially in the West, man, like this team is 2 games over 500. Every freaking game counts in that regular
Yeah.
season. In the seesaw that is the Western Conference standings right now, they can't really afford to, scrap a game for rest or punt on steal an extra 2 or 3 minutes for Jokic here and there, because every game, and by virtue of every game, every segment of a game matters. So that I see, from the non-shooters that make it easier to guard and shrink the floor to the burden on the superstar, I see a lot of the old Cavs and the new Nuggets. And by virtue, I think you see, because the Cavs are so much further along than these Nuggets, you see the evolution. And to Chris's point about the 3-point math, I mean, how many times did we have this conversation in reverse last year about, well, the Cavs are controlling the paint, but the math ain't mathing, because the Celtics or whoever are just taking and making more threes. This is a real interesting benchmark moment for growth for the Cavs.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you think back to JB Bickerstaff, how many different times he said in pregame press conferences, postgame press conferences, we want to win the paint. That was his philosophy as a coach. We want to win the paint. We want to dominate the paint. We want to protect the paint. Everything was about the paint. And part of the reason why the Cavs went out this offseason and made the coaching change is because they wanted somebody with more modern philosophies. They wanted somebody with more creativity on the offensive end. They wanted somebody who was going to make this offense less predictable. And you continue to see signs of that. You continue to see signs that this is a real thing for the Cavs. They are a legitimate, high-powered offensive team, one of the most prolific offenses in the NBA. And I would also say that I don't think that they're over-reliant on the three-point shot. I think they find the right balance. And I think the beauty of the Cavs this year is that they can vary their offensive approach based on how the game is going, based on the opponent, based on how they're being defended. You want to play fast? All right, they'll play fast. You want to slow it down? Okay, that's fine. They can do that too. They can play fast and slow and be effective at both. They can play inside and outside and be effective at both. They can play big or small, and they can be effective at both. And the mark of a great team, a complete team, is being able to have multiple pathways to a win and being able to play multiple styles successfully. And the Cavs continue to show signs that they can do that.
And Jimmy kind of referenced it earlier on. Like, Michael Malone kind of previewed what was going to happen for his team. And unfortunate for him, it came true, because as Jimmy mentioned, he leaned into how Nikola Jokic has been playing more minutes than he has in his entire career. He played 39 minutes tonight. He had 20, 20, and 10. Like, you are asking a whole lot of him, and it still didn't get the job done. And then he also mentioned, like, if the Cavs shoot 41% from three or higher, they win games. Anytime, I think he said in the 3 games that they lost, they shot 31 or lower. So it's as you said, Chris, it's a math equation, and they came in understanding that, but still weren't able to stop the Cavs from doing what they did tonight. And obviously, that is not only a testament to the work that they put in, but to how fluid the offense is, and like Chris said, being able to mix and match it. You saw Evan still attacking the paint. You saw Jared Allen still getting into the interior. All those different things. But it also leans into the fact that the Cavs took tied the most amount of threes that they've made this season, or that they've taken the season at 48, and they made the most that they've taken this season, right? So they made 22 and they took 48. So again, with the math, like, if you make two less than the team takes on the opposing end, the numbers are leaning in your favor extremely heavily.
But the beauty of it for the Cavs is that it comes within the flow of the offense, and it comes naturally, and it comes based on the pressure that they put on opposing defenses by attacking the paint. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are really lethal in terms of their ability to get into the paint, especially when they're getting screens from Jared Allen or Evan Mobley. So it's not just like they're passing the ball around the perimeter and they're only staying on the perimeter. It's within the flow of the offense. It's attacking the paint as much as they possibly can and forcing the defense into a predicament. What are you going to give up? Are you going to give up a floater to Darius Garland? Or are you going to try and contest his shot and then Darius can kick it into the corner for Karis LeVert, for George Niang, for Sam Merrill, for Donovan Mitchell? So I think a big change for the Cavs this year, guys, is just how they're generating those threes and the quality of threes that they're generating. You know, there are a bunch of different numbers that every coaching staff is going to use, and even players look at them. I was talking to Donovan Mitchell in the locker room after the game, and he's got a friend of his who's really, really into analytics, and he does a lot of stuff with that. And after every single season, he sends Donovan a spreadsheet of where Donovan ranks in terms of quality of shot taken. And, you know, the last couple of years, it hasn't been what Donovan wanted it to be. This year, the kind of shots that he's getting, they're better looks. They're better quality looks. They're within the flow of the offense. They're more catch and shoot as opposed to dribble pull-ups. And everybody in the NBA would tell you that they'd rather have a catch and shoot opportunity than a dribble pull-up. So the kinds of looks that the Cavs are getting is really, really important. And the way that they're generating their threes, that's really important too. And it all starts with Darius being able to break down the defense and Donovan being able to break down the defense and Karis being able to break down the defense and the varied approach that they have within this offense where the defense doesn't know who it's going to be on a possession-to-possession basis. The defense doesn't know who it's going to end up with and who it's going to start with. And when you have multiple guys touching it throughout the course of a possession and you have that continuous movement in the half court, the defense is thinking, what do we do? What do we try and take away? You can't take away everything that the Cavs bring to the table.
And obviously that goes into the 4 different Cavs players that had 20 or more points tonight. But that also talks a little bit about the assist numbers as well. 32 of their 47 made field goals were assisted on, and 3 different players had 6 assists. And you talk about 5 different players having 4 or more assists in the game. So like you said, that ball is popping, it's moving around, and it makes them unpredictable. And that's one of the things that we felt that the Cavs needed to improve on coming into the season, because a lot last season, it felt like they were going through Donovan, and it was, Donovan, do this, and then we'll see what happens if it fails.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they don't have to be over-reliant on Donovan Mitchell or over-reliant on just one guy. And part of that is because they run good stuff. They run stuff that creates quality opportunities for everybody, and not just Donovan, not just Darius. It can be Sam Merrill. It can be George Niang. You know, they came out of a timeout at one point in the game against the Nuggets, and they ran 3 different really good actions within one possession. You know, they're not just reliant on one thing to create consistent quality offense. It felt like last year, you know, their only real path to consistent quality offense was high pick and roll because of how good Darius and Donovan are out of the pick and roll, and because how good Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are as screen setters and rollers and stuff like that. But they have multiple ways that they can create quality, consistent offense. And that's one of the things that makes them so dangerous.
It's also to the point about, we've been talking about this philosophical shift from they still want to be defense first, but it's like it's almost like defense everything to, okay, but this is the NBA, we have to score 120 points.
Yes.
That's just the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
And I thought your point, Chris, about running multiple really good actions in one possession is important, because their offense was so deliberate in past years. And we talked about why, like JB always said, playing with pace means a lot of different things. Playing with pace. The Cavs have been talking about playing with force, playing with purpose in recent days. That can mean that. But there is also just a certain reality of starting things at a certain point in the shot clock. And that not only does that give defenses less time to set, but it might give you a chance to reset if it doesn't work the first time around, right? Like I think pace is in this regard speaking to your ability to try different things, whereas before it just felt like they were, there's a little dribbling. We're just gonna hang out over here. The screener's just gonna jog on up there, and what will be with that possession. Not the case anymore. There's also the idea of how deep they are, how deep they always were. Because right, they didn't add a ton of new bodies. Ty Jerome obviously completely new addition. That's a huge deal. But like this idea that they really can go 1 through 15. That's a huge. I mean, that's what I'm writing for the site in the morning is the Nuggets feel like they have to play Nikola Jokic 38 minutes a game and play through him basically the entire time he's on the court because Bruce Brown, one of their connectors, is gone, because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, one of their best shooters, is gone. Jamal Murray is not the player he was 3 years ago. Not saying he can't be that guy by the time the playoffs come around again, but he isn't right now. There's just a lot of things that have gone sideways for that team, frankly, because when you win a championship, the rules of the league make it harder to maintain your roster. I think Denver probably could have spent more to keep some of those guys around. It's not a Nuggets podcast, but that is still a point. I think that is valid. Whereas the Cavs, Karis LeVert can Karis LeVert's getting 20 tonight, sweet. Ty Jerome's getting 20 tonight, sweet. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, the Jared Allen, not tonight obviously, but 8, 15, and 6 is still a great line. But Jared Allen's 15 to 16 points that you can count on from just dump offs. Those are just innings eater points that are fantastic. You're seeing it now with Donovan and Darius, that the lack of weight, the lightness that you play with when you're not counted on for every possession. And I think you'll really see it in the spring. You'll really see it down the road.
To enhance that point too, did anybody miss Isaac Okoro? And no. This is no knock on Isaac. None at all. He is, because of the injury that they're dealing with Max Strus, and because, Dean Wade is just back from his injury, and because, Kenny Atkinson really likes Karis LeVert coming off the bench, and he wants to create that balance between starters and bench, Isaac Okoro has been the majority of time starter for the Cavs at small forward. He played 11 minutes tonight. You wouldn't even recognize that. You wouldn't even realize that, because they had other guys that stepped forward. Dean Wade, really, really good in his minutes, right? Karis LeVert, really, really good in his minutes, especially in the first quarter, finding that rhythm early on, knocking down 4 threes in the first quarter, providing that scoring punch off the bench. It's not a knock against Isaac Okoro, but their starting small forward left the game in the first half after playing 11 minutes, and it's like you didn't even notice it.
First, like you get the Celtics had 2 rotation guys out the other night, and that means they were counting on a 2-way player in Drew Peterson. The Cavs had two guys out. Yeah, no disrespect to Drew Peterson, but like 2-way guys, just not who you want in the game when you're playing, especially like when a game like that counts for the number 1 seed chase, right? Yeah. But the Cavs had that same game. They had 2 rotation guys out, Max Strus, Dean Wade. That means their first round pick finally got a chance to play. That's a snapshot of how deep this team is right now.
And I think it's important to also kind of bring it back to the fact that Isaac, I feel like if Kenny Atkinson could have his pick, right? We've talked a lot about this starting lineup and how things have been interchangeable and all those different things, especially with Max Strus's return being at some point. It has to be at some point, right? Because we can't say it's imminent or nothing like that. But when you talk about that, I feel like if Kenny Atkinson had his pick, because me and Chris have talked on this podcast before, that Kenny talks a lot about different sports, like football and hockey, and sometimes even referencing soccer. I feel like if he could make his pick, he would have a baseball lineup, and depending on who's pitching or who the best player is on the other team, he would sub in Isaac or Max or Dean into the starting lineup. Obviously, that's not how starting lineups usually work for an NBA roster, but for me, seeing Dean Wade in his second game back be able to match up with and switch with 6'6" and above wings when it comes to the starting lineup of the Denver Nuggets, from Christian Brown through Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, and then Jamal Murray, 6'4", running the point. Obviously, not actually running the point when Nikola bringing the ball up most of the time, but like having Dean out there makes an immense difference. Even when you talk about how the size impacts just going into the paint. And Evan Mobley talked about it after the game, how it like it feels like we talk about this with them a lot whenever Dean's playing, but he kind of chuckled and he was like, it just makes things so much easier because it's the same size, it's the same height. It doesn't matter, like you can switch whatever, and they're not going to look at Dean any differently because he has that reputation. There's that word again, Chris, reputation on the defensive end. And I just think, like, no slight to Isaac Okoro or what he's been able to do this season, his growth as a roller, all those different things. But if for this game, if Kenny Atkinson would have had his pick and Dean Wade wasn't just coming back from an injury, he would have started Dean Wade anyway.
It's funny because I got a text from somebody outside the organization, a rival executive, prior to the game, and they were wondering about the starting lineup for the Cavs. And I said, from what I've heard, it's not going to change. They're going to stick with Isaac. And he texted me back and he said, that's interesting. I thought they would have gone with the size of Dean Wade and the switchability of Dean Wade. And I think you felt that, again, like, I know that I'm the mayor of Dean Wade Island, but like, is it a coincidence that the defense intensity like really, really picked up, and the defensive connectedness and everything that Kenny Atkinson has been talking about? Like, is it a coincidence that it picked up in the second half when Dean was in that starting lineup and they could switch things a little bit easier when they had a little bit more size, a little bit more strength, more rebounding out there on the floor? Like, at some point, these things stop being a coincidence, and the answer is, like, Dean Wade is really freaking good, and he adds a lot to this team, especially on the defensive end of the floor, and they're a better basketball team when he's healthy and when he's playing big minutes.
I'll go back to my favorite dumb guy basketball take that I always say on this podcast. Basketball's for tall people, and Dean Wade is tall. Isaac Okoro is a 5-star prospect and a top 5 pick, and Dean Wade is some dude from Kansas, but Dean Wade is tall. All right? So and Dean Wade, in all seriousness, moves his feet better than you think, is a smart defender. Like, all these things apply. But from the very basics of it, harder to shoot over Dean Wade than it is to shoot over Isaac Okoro. Just a fact.
And the other thing that I think when you talk about the boys that haven't really gotten a whole lot of love when it comes to their NBA career, Sam Merill falls into that category too. And what he's been able to do on the defensive end, I've seen and heard some other players from opposing teams talk about it throughout the last couple of weeks. And they're like, they didn't know that he was going to be able to stay in front of different guys like that are taller, bigger than him. And we know that Sam, again, 6'4", Isaac Okoro, 6'5", have limitations on the defensive end just because of their height. It's felt like they have, or Sam Merill in particular, at the point of attack, has shown himself in a different light. And then on Media Row tonight, we had when Sam Merill drove to the bucket against, again, 2 guys that were much taller than him and laid it up with seemingly ease. One of the people that was sitting next to me on Media Row was like, "No way, you're kidding!" like it is a surprise for people to see Sam Merill be able to execute at this level because he's so known as a shooter. Like last year, Chris, we were talking about how he was like having a come out party as a sharpshooter because nobody had planned for him on the scouting report. Now you have to add a different layer to his scouting report. It's getting thicker as the season goes on. And it's partially because after talking with Dean Wade about how the freedom that he's receiving more so with Kenny Atkinson. And I think it's a lot different from some of the things that we've seen previously with him, especially when you talk about on the defensive end. Obviously, him hitting 2 threes is great. But him having a layup, him having 5 rebounds is definitely added value to a guy that you would think would have some liability or maybe a smaller role on this kind of caliber team.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. If Sam's not getting his shot, he's still making things happen on the offensive end of the floor. Right? He's either passing it back to Donovan to reset the offense or go into the next action, or he's forcing a switch because that's what you have to do defensively when playing against a guy like Sam Merrill. You just don't want to be not connected to him. So you switch those things, or he's forcing confusion because of his constant movement and his back cutting. So he's the kind of guy who can make an impact even if he takes 0 shots, because you always have to pay attention to him. You always have to run with him. Chances are you're going to have to switch things on the defensive end of the floor to stay in front of him. He's one of the guys who leads the NBA in off-ball cuts every single season. It's like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Max Strus, and Sam Merrill. Like, that constant movement, that gravity, that attention that he draws, it just makes things easier on his teammates. And now you think about Max Strus is the same kind of player, and they're doing all of these kinds of things, especially on the offensive end of the floor, without Max. And you talk about the connection that Donovan has built with Sam Merrill. Just think about what it's going to be when Donovan and Max are out there together, and the different kinds of things that the Cavs can do on the offensive end of the floor, because it's going to be Max instead of Dean, or because it's going to be Max instead of Isaac Okoro. Just when I watch Sam Merrill, that's all I continue to think about. And credit to Sam, because he's been really, really good, and he's found his role on this team, and he understands his role on this team, and he makes an impact every time he takes the floor because of the attention that he commands. Because nobody's going to leave Sam Merrill, even if he's 2 for 7 from 3-point range like he is tonight. Like, defenders aren't just going to be like, all right, cool, we're going to relax. No, they're still going to guard him the same kind of way. And it just creates confusion and chaos.
It's not just that you have to run with him, right? You have to run at him. If you do happen to fall asleep for a second, you get the ball, you got to run at him. And that's where you get these driving lanes that Ethan was alluding to, right? It's not, I'm sure Sam Merrill has a sweet first step in his own right, but it's more about the attention that it's the 5-alarm fire that he creates when he has the slightest sliver of space to shoot, right? It's one pump fake a drive, or even just I've caught you in the wrong, and you've closed out too hard. Now I can go right past you, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get to the rim all the time, but that simplifies reads for him too. Like, you're not, when we're talking about Sam Merrill putting the ball on the floor, that doesn't mean tween crossover or anything like that. It just means go around the guy who's running full speed at you, and then you're forcing someone to step up and help, and now you got the defense scrambling. Someone has to help for the helper, and someone has to fill in behind them. And you're just increasing the odds that somebody on the back end of that chain is going to make a mistake. And when we start talking about the parallels between the Warriors, who are on my television right now, actually, and this offense, that's what it's about. It's not so like Sam Merrill and Max Strus as comparison to Steph and Klay is a little odd, because obviously there's no real Steph or real Klay in this equation. But the idea is you have guys out there that defenses have to pay so much attention to that they create mistakes for other players around them. You have to, you get mixed up on trying to switch a screen between two shooters, or like we're talking about Sam or Max. You have two guys on the court that require hard closeouts and can drive past those closeouts. I mean, bodies are flying all over the place, and the ball's flying all over the place, and all of a sudden it's like, where did Darius Garland come from? That happens how many times? I mean, Cavs fans know this. How many times in those Cavs Warriors series did frickin' Steph Curry and Kevin Durant just end up wide open? It's like, well, how in the world could you lose that guy? It's like, because, buddy, I got 2 more over here that I'm trying to keep track of. It's a lot.
I mean, there used to be cases in the NBA Finals where Steph would be streaking down the left-hand side and Klay would be streaking down the right-hand side, and then KD was all by himself, middle of the court, because the Cavs were like, I'm not leaving Klay. I'm not leaving Steph. And it ended in a KD dunk or a KD layup. But they're like, we're just not giving up the 3. We're not giving up the transition 3. And, Donovan Mitchell has things a little bit easier for him. His looks are coming a little bit easier in rhythm because he's sharing the floor at various points with Sam Merrill. Darius Garland is having things easier for him because he's sharing the floor at points with Sam Merrill. And defenders just don't want to leave him. They stick on him as much as possible. And, they have a lot of different guys that defenders have to do that to. Because if they don't, it's going to be an open three from a really capable 3-point shooter. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, Jimmy, like, who do you leave? There's nobody to leave unless it's Isaac Okoro, who they continue to make that decision on over and over and over again. And to Isaac's credit, he continues to burn defenses with that because he's shooting at such a high clip when he gets those looks.
And there will be offense-defense decisions to be made on some of this stuff during the playoffs, but flexibility, lineup flexibility, having the optionality
that's a big word in this organization.
Yes, optionality, be able to plug and play. Okay, Isaac Okoro's not making his shots. All right, let's throw Sam Merrill in there. Sam Merrill's getting cooked on defense. Isaac, come back in. That's the vision. You can see it pretty clearly right now.
And it's funny you say it can't be a tween, Jimmy, for Sam Merrill, but he had a couple of those tonight. And they were eye-catching. Like, he didn't do anything with it. But he would go tween, set something out, let some actions move behind him, and then dish the ball off to Darius or Donovan or Karras or whoever it might have been. But and I asked Darius and Donovan and Dean and and George Niang after this because they have some history with him that it looks like he's bringing old Utah State Sam Merrill out of his bag because it's different actions, it's different moves, it's different shots. And for those who didn't read my story last year about the welcome to Cleveland basically for Sam Merrill from Utah State, is Sam was the point guard, the top scorer, and the one that they went to for championship buzzer beaters when it comes to the Utah State and getting into the NCAA tournament. And if you turn that guy into now Sam Merrill, who has a better shot, better health, better physicality, all these different things, it's a scary player. And George Niang talked about it a little bit extra tonight about how he went and played Sam when he was in Utah at Utah State. And it was terrible to guard him then. And Jalen Tyson even said in the background of an interview, like, try guarding him 3-on-3, Dean Wade said. And Jalen Tyson said, nah, I'm going to just foul. So, like, there's different wrinkles to everybody's game on this team. Obviously, we understand NBA players, if you walk into a regular gym, are going to outclass everybody. But I think Sam Merrill is definitely a guy to keep an eye on because of how he's growing into kind of his old self with the freedom that he's been given.
Yeah, and I think it's good to give players freedom. I do. And I think that's something that can certainly enhance Sam's game and create more problems for defenses. But I always find a danger in expanding it a little bit too much and going away from who you are. Like, the last thing that the Cavs want is for Sam Merrill to start hesitating from 3-point range because he's looking to drive or attack the basket or create off the dribble. Like, that's not who he is. That's not what they need from him. So as long as he stays within himself and continues to look for those quick trigger opportunities, and he does that, and he finds the right balance, and he combines the right things, that's the sweet spot for somebody like him. Because, I mean, he's on this team to create chaos, to move around, provide gravity, and shoot threes. Shoot as many threes as possible. And as long as he knows that and he continues to stick with that, there's going to be a place for him on this team, especially in Kenny's system. That needs a guy like that.
I think it is a thin line between having it's good that you have the confidence of Utah State Sam Merrill. We don't actually want to see him. We want to keep him in Utah State, but keep the Aggies in the Aggie bag. But I think it speaks to the fact, even if it's just a couple of aimless dribbles here and there, I think that does speak to the freedom that he feels in this. Like, that's the Kenny effect right there. The idea that Sam Merrill feels comfortable showing a little bit more of what he can do because he's not worried about what it would mean to step 1 inch outside of this very rigid role that you have cut out for me, right? I mean, we've talked about this a lot in the early portions of the season where George Niang, Sam Merrill, guys like that are talking about, it feels like if I'm missing a shot, I'm coming out. I mean, forget dribbling. I mean, if Sam Merrill, forget dribbling. If Sam Merrill, tried to show off what he tried to show a little Utah State, Sam Merrill when JB Bickerstaff was good. I mean, we might not see him for 3 games.
No.
But this is part of the culture shift. I think I'm pretty darn sure that Kenny Atkinson didn't go to Sam Merrill and say, "Hey, show me some ball handling. Show me a little ball handling out there." He didn't do that. Sam's just feeling comfortable out there. Right. And that's it. He's unlocked like some old muscle memory of him as a basketball player. I don't think that's a bad thing as long as, like Chris said, he keeps it in its place.
Kenny Atkinson has a unique ability to empower players, to instill confidence in them, and to give them this level of freedom. When Steph Curry was in town with the Warriors and Draymond Green was in town with the Warriors, they were talking about those kinds of things with Kenny. And you see that. You feel that with this team. There is a looseness to George Niang. There is. And he's not getting outside of himself, and he's not crossing the line, right? He's still staying within himself. He's still understanding of his role. He's still playing to that role. For all of the criticism that he tends to get from this fan base, he's playing to his role to the best of his ability. He's making an impact coming off the bench, but there's a looseness to his game. There's a freedom to his game. There's a joy to his game. I think you're going to see it with Max Strus when he comes back. I think you're going to see that same thing. You see it with Sam Merrill as well. There were times where Sam felt like, if I miss a couple of shots in the first half, I'm not going to get to play in the second half. There were times that George Niang felt like, if I miss a couple of shots in the first half, I'm not going to get to play in the second half. And look, every coach is going to go about it a different kind of way. And I don't know that there is a right way or a wrong way. Steve Kerr has a vision for how he wants to operate his teams. It's not the same as Eric Spoelstra, but they're both great coaches, right? Ty Lue has a vision for how he wants to operate his team. It's not the same as Greg Popovich, but they're still great coaches. JB Bickerstaff had a different view of how to use his bench and how to use the back end of his rotation and how many guys he was comfortable with in his rotation. But because Kenny operates the way that he does, it has given these guys a level of freedom, a level of confidence, and they feel empowered.
Yeah.
Just real quick, the Jalen Tyson first start, near triple-double.
Yes.
Like, that's not an accident either. I mean, that's a credit to Jalen Tyson for being ready and having the talent and showing a lot of the things that the Cavs saw in him when they made him first-round pick. But not, like, that's also that's what we're talking about here. The idea that someone could come in and feel that comfortable right away, I think that's part of the culture that Kenny's building here too.
And you mentioned George Niang, and I think that's a perfect example of like trying to find the middle ground, because there are some times where he attacks smalls off the dribble and uses his big frame and gets into the lane and has some easy layups. Then there's also some times I'm like, why are you dribbling the basketball? So, like, it's a give and take, right? And there are different situations for both things. And I think Sam Merrill can learn and look at both of those different things. But the thing that I want to end the podcast on was, we talked about how Michael Malone mentioned that they knew that they needed to try and stifle the Cavs' three-pointer. I feel like the Cavs kind of had the same outlook when it came to the Nuggets getting to the free throw line. They were the best team in getting to the line. Coming into the game, they averaged 25 free throw attempts per game. The Cavs held them to 22 attempts, right? So under is good, successful, maybe not, whatever you might want to see. But I want to get your thoughts on that, you guys, but I also want to get your thoughts on the Cavs' free throws as well. Like, they took just 16 and made 10. Is this worrisome? Like, I know they've struggled from the line in the last couple of games, What are your thoughts on this? And this is where we'll wrap up.
Well, I think when you talk about the Nuggets in particular and them not getting to the free throw line, I think there are certain kinds of teams that bother the Cavs. I think there are certain teams that match up better with the Cavs than others. Those teams are fast, they're athletic, they're long, they're loaded with wings, they shoot a bunch of threes, they get up and down the floor, they can switch a lot of stuff. That's not the Nuggets. It's hard to sit here and say that the Nuggets are a relatively easy matchup for the Cavs stylistically, but I think there are elements that make the Nuggets easy for the Cavs to guard. They were only worried about two guys beyond the three-point line, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. And the whole idea was to limit the number of threes that those guys took and run them off the line. Michael Porter Jr. took 9 of his shots inside the three-point line. That is a win. Jamal Murray took 13 of his shots inside the three-point line. That is a win. And I just think, even though Jokic creates a lot of problems and it demands a lot of stuff for your defense, and it's a very, very unique way that you have to go about it defensively, because running offense through a 5-man is very rare in this league. I think it's something that the Cavs are equipped to handle. They're better equipped to handle that than what Chicago does. They're better equipped to handle that than what Boston does. They're better equipped to handle that than what the Atlanta Hawks do, what the Milwaukee Bucks do. So I just think this was a favorable matchup from the Cavs, and they came in with a smart, specific game plan. They executed it, and when the team is not that difficult to defend, you don't feel like you have to grab. You don't feel like you're a step behind. You don't feel like you're out of position on the defensive end of the floor. The Cavs went through a stretch where they were fouling a bunch and sending these teams to the free throw line, but those were different kinds of teams. So I think part of the reason why the Cavs didn't foul as much tonight against the Nuggets is because that style of team doesn't give their defense all that many problems.
It's twofold. Number one, like Chris said, there's not a lot of shooters out there. At the Nuggets at their peak, we're putting Nikola Jokic in the middle and surrounding him with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell, Pope, Aaron Gordon, four of those 5 around Jokic. And the best you could do was leave Aaron Gordon open in the corner and be like, hope he doesn't make that one. Basically what it is. It's the most valuable shot in basketball. Hope he doesn't make it. Aaron Gordon's gotten better at that shot too. Hope he doesn't make it. That's the best you could do. Now it's Russell Westbrook. You got your Christian Browns. You got your Peyton Watsons out there. Like some of these guys that they've drafted and hoping they drafted ahead and hoped, okay, those guys could be our Bruce Brown of the future or Kentavious Caldwell Pope of the future. They're not those guys yet. They're not the Peyton Watson, not there as a shooter yet. Christian Brown not there to shoot. They're like Peyton Watson's really interesting to me as a defender. Christian Brown plugs a lot of holes for a basketball team. Not there as shooters yet. We know what Russell Westbrook is at this point in his career. The other thing is, like, they rely on Jokic to get them started, right? This is not a team that like pops the ball around it's not like drive kick. It's get the ball to Jokic. We have to force a double. Once you force a double, then it's drive kick. And the Cavs are uniquely suited with Mobley and Allen to always have someone on Jokic that they could at least try and say, give it beat him one-on-one. We got 2 first team all defense caliber bigs. Go ahead. If that's how you want to operate. And Jokic, 27 points on 26 shots. He shot 50%, but like for the best player in the world, you're living with that, To the point about the free throws from the Cavs end, I just think like, who are we looking at to get all these free throw attempts? Like,
okay, that I get where you're coming from on that one.
Because like
I'm telling
Donovan
you right
Mitchell
now,
and Darius Garland, not historically big free throw attempt guys. Go ahead, Chris.
Donovan's going to get fined soon. I'm telling you right now, he is going to purposely get himself fined because he has had it up to here with the officiating against the Cavs. The Cavs will tell you, and they're right, they're third in the NBA in drives. Third, behind just Oklahoma City and Memphis. And yet, in terms of free throw attempts on drives, they're bottom 10 in the league. You know who's number 1 in free throw attempts on drives? Oklahoma City. They drive a bunch, they get to the free throw line. You know who else is top 12 in free throw attempts on drives? The Memphis Grizzlies, because they drive so much. The Portland Trailblazers, because they drive so much. It just, at some point, it's not adding up. And I totally understand what you're saying, Jimmy. They don't have Giannis, all right? They don't have LeBron. Shea is a different kind of play, very crafty, very good at drawing fouls. But, like, Donovan attacks the basket. Darius attacks the basket. Karis LeVert attacks the basket. You know, Jared Allen plays through contact. Evan Mobley plays through contact. There are enough guys here, and there are enough drives per game for the Cavs that the math is not mathing here. They should be getting more attempts than they are. You know, in terms of total free throw attempts by any team in the NBA, not the free throw attempts that they draw while driving to the basket. Just in terms of free throw attempts per game, they're 26th. They're third in drives. It just doesn't add up. And yeah, you could sit here and you could say, well, the Cavs shoot a bunch of threes. Okay, they're 11th in three-point attempts. What they do really well is make threes and make threes at a high percentage. But it's not like Boston here, where they're taking 50 a game, right? They're driving to the basket. Again, I reiterate, third in the NBA in drives, just barely behind Memphis and Oklahoma City. To be 26th in free throw attempts when you drive that much to the basket? Nah, Donovan's going to get himself fined soon, and he's going to do it on purpose because he is tired of this. He almost got one tonight. He almost got a technical tonight. He did. He was screaming at the official. And if the game would have gone different, if the outcome would have been different, if the tone of question would have been different, he would have gone on a rant about the officiate. It is coming.
I have 2 possible explanations for this. Both of them pretty dumb, but here they come. Number 1, Darius, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, to a lesser extent Donovan, but I'll throw him in there because he's shorter. What do they all have in common? They all have slighter builds. I legitimately think that it could be refs see a guy like Darius Garland get bumped off his spot, and they're just physics tells them, oh, that makes sense to me that this guy would get bumped off his spot. I'm not saying that's a good explanation. I think that's a possible explanation for some of the calls that Darius doesn't get. The other thing is, and this is a story I've been pitching to our editor for like 2 years, I should probably actually up and report it. Do they need to just learn how to draw fouls better? Like, do they need to put on Joel Embiid film and watch how he flops? Or Shea's a perfect example because I think, Embiid is like a ridiculous flopper, and when it's actually embarrassing because you're 7 feet tall and you're huge and you can put people out of position. You can draw so many legitimate fouls that it really pisses me off particularly when he's doing like the jump shooting thing where he just like hooks your arm, and like that really bothers me. Shea is the perfect mix to me of guy who legitimately draws a lot of fouls and guy who knows how to let a ref know, but with his body, that he got fouled. I'm sure the Cavs go over this stuff too, but I just wonder, is there like whether it's Trae Young, who's he skews more annoying to me than Shea does, but Trae Young, Shea, Joel Embiid, prime James Harden, could that be something?
The only time in Donovan Mitchell's career that he has taken fewer free throws is when he was a rookie. Think about that. This is a guy who takes, for the majority of the prime of his career, most seasons, right around 6 per game. He's had 4. And it's not because he's not driving to the basket. He's driving to the basket. He's one of the league leaders in drives. Any player. It's not just a team thing. Like Donovan does it, Darius does it, and nobody is getting calls. And look, Darius does the head throwback thing too. He has started to do that. And, he's got the hair that flies back too because they're in the braids. So he's doing the throw your head back thing on contact. Darius is trying. He knows he's trying. Karis LeVert throwing his head back too. Donovan Mitchell, throwing his arms up in the air, screaming. Usually that's a telltale sign of wanting to get a call. Hey! Hey! As you drive to the basket like Anthony Edwards. They're still not getting calls.
Come on, ref! Anthony Edwards is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
come on, ref!
Exactly. Donovan already talked about this after a game against the New Orleans Pelicans last month. And he did not get fined for that because he towed the line. He is going to be more vociferous next time. I'm telling you, it is coming. Because you can just see the frustration building up with Donovan. How many free throws did he get tonight? Think about this. This is Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell. He got zero. What? What? That's outrageous. There was another game earlier this year that the only time he got to the free throw line was a technical foul. This is Donovan Mitchell. This isn't Sam Merill. This isn't Max Strus. This is Donovan Mitchell. It's really, really bizarre.
And it's getting to the point where because they're 19th, I believe it is, in the league, or 18th in the league in free throw percentage, 77.5. I think it's getting to the point where they're surprised they get to the line or don't have enough reps in game to get to the line and knock them down. Caris LeVert tonight was bad from the line.
Well, he's been bad all year.
Correct. He was 2 of 4. Evan Mobley was 3 of 6. And I believe, and Dean Wade was 0 of 1. Everybody else was perfect from the line. So there are players that kind of get skewed. And obviously we talked about it. Caris LeVert's a guy that drives a lot. We know him as a driver more than a shooter. So it's interesting to make these points and then for them to still not be successful at the free throw line as much as we think that they should be because they only go so many times. So I think that's just something to monitor. And obviously, as Chris is trying to tell us, if this continues, to keep an eye on what Donovan Mitchell might be saying shortly.
Can I say one more thing real quick? This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but Evan Mobley tied the career high with made 3-pointers tonight. That's important. More important, he took 5, and he has now, I think this is 9 straight games where he's taken at least 2, which is tied for the second longest streak of his career. And I just think that's important because we've spent so much time talking about the theory of Evan Mobley as a 3-point shooter. I think he's already 13 attempts away from what he had all of last season or something like that. He's close. It was 50-something last year. It's 40-something now. I just think that's a really important trend to monitor. And I think obviously making 3 is important, but it's really more important to me at this stage that he keeps taking them, because it used to, if you look through his game logs, he has spurts like this and then it stops. And then 1, 1, 1, 1. And then there's another spurt where it's 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. And then it stops. This happening consistently is the first step in a long journey. We are not close to Evan Mobley being the unicorn 3-point shooter that everyone wants him to be. But we are closer if he keeps doing this, if he keeps taking them. And I think the Cavs are in a very unique position because they started off the season so hot that they can use large portions of the season as a freaking basketball experiment, and that should be part of it every night.
The other thing that I felt was important was he took an ugly one. It was a step back at the end of a shot clock. The shot clock was going down, but Kenny Atkinson praised him after the game. He was like, that was my favorite one. Donovan then said his answer was his favorite one was the left corner 3 that he took that he literally had no hesitation on. That reminded me of the clips we had seen all summer from Evan Mobley and what he had worked to get to at this point. So I definitely agree with you, Jimmy. I think that's important to monitor going forward, especially when we talk about his growth and evolution as an offensive player. But that'll wrap up today's episode. So for listeners that want to contribute to a survey about the podcast where you can give your feedback, go to tinyurl.com/WGpod. That's tinyurl.com/WGpod. So, that's it for today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can send in questions, thoughts, concerns directly to our phones, and we can get back to you in a fast manner, and still it'll be right to your phones, and you can get insider information when it comes to injury updates and all those different things. To get this information, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.